Hey Megan, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive right in. This is a very interesting topic that I know a lot of people probably have questions about, but don't really know where to go to get some of their questions answered. They might even feel a little nervous about asking some of these questions, but they shouldn't be. We need part of more of an open dialogue. But first, let's start with talking about the organization you run, Black Freelance.
Yes. I run blackfreelance.com. It has been up for, I think, 4 years now. We had just hit the 4 year anniversary. I shouldn't say we because it's just me. I'm the only one doing, that's my
Uh-huh.
site. I'm the only one creating content there.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, it is basically a home base for Black freelancers. Anyone who's interested in getting into freelancing, who's currently freelancing and wants to grow their business some. And it is a community site. It is a resource site. It's just a place for people who want to learn more to come and, just get better at what they're doing.
Got it. And I mean, I've seen a part of it. I've been a part of your Twitter discussions, and you've got lots of valuable information on there. Now, I wonder, I'm sure there are plenty of people who might say, well, there are resources out there for freelancers, period. Why is it necessary to have Black freelance versus just freelancers?
Right. I asked that question when I first started myself, is actually why there is a section on the site called Why Black Freelance.
Uh-huh.
But when I first started freelancing, you're out there, you're learning about things. And I started running into just some general questions. Like one of the things that you will hear a lot of just mainstream freelancers advise people is to post your picture online. So I started doing that, and I noticed that in a couple and maybe actually two specific situations, we were having really good back and forth. People seemed excited, and I saw them check my LinkedIn, and all of a sudden they disappeared. And my
Okay.
LinkedIn didn't say anything different than my website. So, that question is in my head. It's like, is this because I'm Black? And it might
Right.
not have been, I didn't know. But what it made me realize is that I had no one to go to ask that kind of question because, I was
Mhm.
freelancers, and there was like, I might run into one or two Black people, but there weren't a lot. You can't really get a feel for what's going on just from talking to a couple of people. Um, it was that, but also as I started to talk to friends and family and let them know what I was doing, because it happened after a layoff, and people ask, oh, hey, what are you doing right now? Have you found another job? And it's like, oh no, I'm freelancing now. And they're like, oh, really? How does that work? And that's what I just kept getting that question over and over again.
Okay.
And then I started to get the question, or actually the statement, that I didn't know people like us could do that kind of thing.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
right. And once I heard that a couple of times, it made me realize not only that there was a need for a site for Black freelancers, but that people's actually, it made me realize that. But then as I started to build the site and started listening to more people's freelance stories, and that's any freelancer, white, Black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, I started to notice how their businesses were shaped by their networks and the cultural experiences they were having.
Okay.
And it made me realize that people's freelance experience are not, culturally neutral. Everyone's experience is shaped by something bigger than themselves. So
Okay.
that, we needed to start paying attention, or like I wanted to start paying attention to, how Black freelancers' careers are shaped by their cultural experiences.
So what does that mean exactly? Like I hear a lot of people talk about your when you think about your culture, sometimes it is so entrenched into who you are, the way you run a business, but it might not be something that other people consider or even feel like it's even visible or noticeable. So how would you articulate that? And do you have any examples of people who felt like, from whether it's Black freelancers or other ones across the board, how their culture impacted their business and the way they run their business? I know you gave an example about like your photo, but are there
Right.
others?
Well, there's specific cultural examples, and then there's just the social and network implications. One of the things that it's actually kind of flipped on the head of what you probably think. But I remember one of the big mainstream problems people said they ran into was saying, "Oh, I don't have a community anymore. I'm not meeting people." I did
Okay.
that. I'm like, I'm not having that problem. I still have my friends and my family and any social organizations I'm in. And I think that's something that's going to be particular to people who are from like more collectivist societies, who might not
Okay.
be using the workplace as a place of socialization, where,
Okay.
white Americans, they might be doing that.
Okay.
But then there's also just, where we come from as professionals. I know a lot of the members on Black Freelance now, they come in, let's just say from the writer perspective, and they want to write on social justice issues. I'm going to assume that most other groups of people don't run into that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that conversation to have, like, okay, this is what your career might look like versus what I see on, more mainstream or predominantly white freelance groups where people are coming into freelancing from a professional perspective. They're
Got
not
it.
necessarily thinking of trying to address social issues because of their own experiences. So.
Got it. Got it. I understand. So yes, I understand. So it's one of those things where if you're not necessarily part of that group, or if it's not even your experience, because I know so much of the way you think about culture and cultural intelligence. I had a guest on recently who said that so much of your culture and your way you think about how you relate to other people is shaped by your own experiences. So if your experiences look nothing like the experiences of some of the people that you're interacting with, you might have to work a little harder to relate to each other and understand where each other is coming from.
Right. And that's something that I personally deal with because my work as a freelancer is not race-based. Like,
right.
I work very mainstream business. I'm a B2B writer. Like, there's no racial or cultural, nothing overt to what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm talking to someone who wants to write on social justice issues, just to use that example again,
mm-hmm.
there are many things that I don't understand that I've had to take time to sit back and listen and just watch their process and the challenges that they go through because it's not something that I'm dealing with.
Right. Got it. Now, I've heard this said quite a bit about the U.S. in particular, that we're in this sort of post-racial society, which I don't believe is true. But we're supposed to, I do agree that we need to embrace our differences more instead of trying to make everyone feel like we are the same and there are no differences between us. We're just humans, right? That's not the place where I would want people to get. But I understand, I hear people saying things like, are groups like Black Freelance or other types of groups that support different minority groups, are they more divisive than unifying in a time where we probably need more unity? So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, my thought on any concept or any question like that is that for you to see something as divisive, it means you thought that there was unity before. If you thought there was unity before, please show it to me. It was not there. It's one of those things where, it's easy to think a house is clean when the lights are off. I think that's what some people are going through. So to me, I do not think, from my experiences, I don't see anything that's more divisive.
Okay.
A site like Black Freelance is bringing more people into freelancing. If someone sees that as divisive, then we have a different definition of what division and togetherness are.
Got it. So so you're existing, you were talking about there are specific issues that you guys are addressing. Like, let's say somebody wanted to talk about social injustice, or should you put your photo on your website and have yourself, your photo be the face, the brand? Are you covering the fundamentals as well, or just very specific challenges that are unique to people of color?
Both, because the fundamentals are shaped by the challenges. There are things like, say, choosing a niche. You'll hear a lot of mainstream freelancers talk about that as, that is a fundamental concept as a freelancer. But what you see as a niche is determined by where you come from. Like, if you come from a background where there are a lot of lawyers and a lot of doctors, you're going to understand medicine and, law, or a lot of business people are going to understand business. If you're coming from a background where you are involved deeply in community organizations and everyone around you is involved in the same thing, that's where you're going to lean, that's where you're going to feel that your expertise is. Questions like that lead to bigger questions of, like, earning potential, emotional investment in your work. And those are just very fundamental questions, like, how much can you earn as a freelancer? So someone who's starting as, say, someone's husband was a doctor and that's where they start doing their social media work, is coming from a very different income place than someone who's coming from a background in the not-for-profit sector and just doing what feels natural to them. So it's kind of the same thing, honestly.
Got it. Now, you and I talked previously a while back on this topic, and you kind of brought it up when you were saying that whenever you were starting freelancing and people were like, oh, I didn't know that I could do that. I've heard people talk about diversity and when they're, let's say they're putting a panel together or around a discussion, or they're building their a network of people that they can tap into for jobs, a lot of times I've heard people say say that their traditional means of looking for candidates or people or freelancers, sometimes sometimes it fuels them to hire people who look like them more so. And it's not as easy for them to find, particularly within some of the mainstream channels, people of color, people who have diverse backgrounds and different backgrounds that they may not be used to. So what are your thoughts on the role that Black freelance and other groups like yours play to help bring more qualified people into the candidate pool so that they can start infiltrating the supplier pool, the freelance pool, and just the talent that's out there for people to be able to tap into?
Well, there's a lot going on in that question.
I know.
I think there's a very different dynamic going on in employment organizations and freelance relationships.
Okay.
For one, I have, like, when I was employed probably 15 years, and I never got a referral from, anyone I worked with for a job. That is completely different in freelancing. My experiences racially have been very different in freelancing than they have been in employment. So I think as far as, that's concerned, there is, as long as for freelancers, not saying that racism doesn't play a part, but what you are able to contribute weighs more heavily on the freelance side, just because you're not part of an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Together. On the employment and on the organizational side, I think it's one of those questions that has to start internally. I think there is an incorrect assumption that a lot of people in business and a lot of people in any kind of organizational situation start from is they start from the point that they are neutral.
Okay.
They are not. There is one of the things I love most about business school was getting to study cultural differences between business. And, one of the favorite theories that I ran across, I don't know if it's even still pertinent anymore, was Geert Hofstede's theory of cultural dimensions.
Okay.
And it places, a lot of different countries on different scales of different dimensions, from masculinity, the relationship with time, individualism. And one of the things it does is it places, American culture, which is honestly, when they say it, is white American culture, on a scale. So, before you start asking the diversity question and, how to get more people in, I think it's a question of taking a step back and understanding that, our organization is most likely, the way that we interact and the way that we search for people and the way that our networks are built are based on white American values,
Mm-hmm.
which means that we're going to be more masculine, we're going to be more individualist, we're going to have much shorter time horizons.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to start there. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but I do think it's important for people to start there before they get frustrated and say, "Oh, we can't find people." It's because you're working within your comfort zone and where you're culturally comfortable.
Got it. So whenever it comes to finding more diverse team members, whether that's somebody to hire or somebody that you want to work with or partner with as a freelancer, contractor, etc., if I hear what you're saying is you really have to abandon the mainstream way that you traditionally go and basically kind of fish where the fish are and kind of enter into some of the more places where you're more likely to find qualified, candidates that fit the diverse criteria that you're looking for.
Yeah, if that is a genuine priority, like if that is really what you want to do, you have to accept that takes work. Even for me, say in Black freelance, because I come from a very traditional business background. I also come from a very traditional internet business background. This is the first based project that I've really done. I had to take a step back and say, what I have learned about, meeting people and creating content and creating demand is based on this specific culture. How do I change that? And I still have to ask that question every day. It is difficult. I have to examine myself and my habits and results, and I have to listen to people, and I have to understand that it means that I might have to sacrifice profitability and comfort and time. And if people aren't really willing to do that, I would question the genuine intent of their initiatives.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because sometimes I felt like, and you and I have talked about this before, sometimes I kind of feel like I operate in two worlds, right? And I think part of it is because of, my background in corporate America. So going back to what you were saying about, your starting point of, how things work. And when we go to school, we go to business school, we learn how things work. That's kind of more so based upon the norm, right? So whenever I left my corporate job and started my own business, I continued along those same paths. Now,
Yeah.
I noticed that I follow the people that I learned from, a lot of my mentors, a lot of the organizations that I part of, the conferences that I go to. Those are very much what I would probably consider more mainstream environments. And whenever I go to those types of events, I'm generally maybe the only black person in the room, one of very few black people in the room, very few black women in the room. So, but that's kind of the norm that I've operated in. Now, I have some other people in my network, colleagues, friends, they have the exact opposite experience. They are very much entrenched into a black network where it's their learning environment, their mentors, etc., are all based in this different nucleus. And not to say that anyone is right or wrong, it's just that they both exist. They're kind of two
Right.
different worlds that don't always cross. So I think anytime anybody wants to try and figure out, I think it probably benefits people to be able to figure out how to cross both of those worlds so you know how to interact, engage, operate, and know that it's not that there's necessarily a lack of talent. You just need to know where you should be looking to find it.
Yeah, I think that you also have to be willing to look. I also think, and like I said, like I've never been a part of a diversity initiative, and as far as I know, I've never been a target. You never really know. I think a lot of organizations, again, need to take a step back and look at, like, because every organization has experience with diversity. They've had,
Mhm.
it's 2018, like you've had people in your organization. I think it's worth asking the question what you are bringing people into, asking what kind of success rate you've had with diverse people within your organization. Are you paying them fairly? What is their job satisfaction experience like compared to, more mainstream employees? Like, you might have issues internally that are influencing even the way that you create your diversity initiatives. I think that's a question that organizations should be asking even before they start any kind of initiative. And like, that might be happening. I have no idea.
Right.
But yeah, that's my thought on it.
Do you feel that there needs to be organizations, professional organizations within a company that serves the needs? Like, I know we called them employee resource groups whenever I was worked my corporate job. And I think sometimes people felt like they were beneficial. Other times they felt like, oh, we're not really sure. But we often, as employees who were part of them, viewed them as a safe space. To talk about issues that again were very specific to what our experience was that other people might not have been able to recognize, do you feel like from your experience listening to some of the people that you've been mentoring through Black Freelance, that this is something that is beneficial across the board, both within companies and within professional organizations as well?
I don't know from the people I've spoken with, because a lot of the people, like, honestly, when you get to the point of freelancing, especially Black people, you're probably just fed up. Like,
Okay.
like an internal organization is not going to make any difference. Like, I'm done, or I'm scared, or I just don't want to try this. I think it goes back to motive. Like, what is the organization's do you care about your employees in the first place? My professional background, I will say, is, I've worked for small companies, I've worked for larger companies and startups, but none were very invested. Oh, well, small company was, but none of the larger ones who were like large enough to have that kind of program, they didn't really care. Like, it wasn't something they invested in. It really wasn't. HR departments were pretty awful and pretty, just very elementary. So I've never gotten to see what that looks like.
Okay.
But like anything else in business, like, you know what a mission statement is, and if it does not tie into your mission statement, like, it's not going to work. That's general rule in any organization.
Got it. Got it. Now, going back to, I think a lot of businesses are starting to understand the importance of how diversity impacts their bottom line, as they think about the changing demographics and makeup of their customer group, particularly in the US as you become more global. and that how it is important to have an employee base that often reflects the customers that you're trying to serve. Do you see this as an opportunity for the freelancers that you're working with, and even other freelancers, contractors, people of color, to be able to step in and provide a level of guidance and expertise that's needed?
If you understand it, I think there's a lot of opportunity from especially like a consulting standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not pure freelance standpoint, but you know, it all depends. There's a lot of different kinds of freelance work out there. One thing I always encourage people to do is I get a lot of people coming in from, say, a blogging background or just like a general internet content creation. It's not, you know, Black freelance isn't just writers, just want to be clear, but I get a lot of writers that come in and ask questions.
Right.
But a lot have a specialization and understanding of, say, let's just use like makeup as an example. Like if you understand Black skin and Black makeup trends, you have a specialization, you have a niche that could appeal to larger companies, that could appeal to brands who are, you know, looking to reach out to different populations, and they might not be interested in investing internally in building those teams, so they might see freelancing as a solution to that.
Right.
There is opportunity there. That's something you kind of usually have to sell, though, because there's a lot of services that people offer that corporations do not know are out there.
Right.
Like even like what I do, most companies don't know that, like someone with my special, like I'm niche down very deep, like 4 or 5 levels. They don't know I exist. So I have to, you know, step out and let them know I'm there. Like, you know, most recruiters and most, you know, project managers or whatever aren't getting on Google and searching for like, you know, Black makeup blogger, expert, consultant or whatever,
right.
you know,
right.
for that. So, you know, there's a connection issue there. I think there is opportunity, but you have to go out and find it.
Got it. Megan, this has been a great discussion, and I think a needed one. And hopefully people will feel like they can open the dialogue or have somebody that they can come and talk to if they have any specific questions about this, because I think that's how we are able to get to a common ground and better understanding. So people are always welcome to come and talk to me. If you're open to it, we can direct them to you. I'm sure you have lots of discussions on Twitter in particular with your audience and people who are willing to engage. So.
Yes.
Any parting words of wisdom for people who are figuring out how they can tap into people of color who can really help them serve their customers better and create remarkable experiences for them?
Start internally. You really have to start, you know, really have to ask yourself, are you willing to engage with people and respect them and take the time and investment? Like that's where it all starts.
Very good. All right, and where can people find you if they want to learn more?
I am on blackfreelance.com. On Twitter, I am blackfreelance1 because somebody owns Black Freelance and they haven't used it in forever and it's very crazy. So on Twitter, I'm blackfreelance1, Black Freelance on Facebook, but you can find me pretty much in there. And if you want to email me, connect@blackfreelance.com. Ask me questions, because questions help me learn what's actually going out there and, you know, serve people better.
Sweet. Thank you again.
Thank you.